covers an area of over 500 square miles and extends over 9 counties in the southern half of Wales. It has terrific scenery and notoriously challenging landscapes. For many, it's a playground. For me, it's a place to escape, a place to be alone with nature. Over the seasons, I'm exploring the magic of the beacons. It's spring, and it is the very best time to be out in the woods. The birds are singing, and the spring flowers are putting on such a terrific show. I'm in Pwllhewrach Wood. It's a wonderful ancient woodland in the eastern part of the Brecon Beacons near Talgarth. It's a landscape that doesn't immediately come to mind when you think of the beacons, but the National Park has some terrific woodlands. As the leaves on the trees haven't fully emerged yet, light can penetrate to the woodland floor and the ground plants are at their best. Herb Paris is a particular speciality of this kind of woodland. It was used in medieval times to guard against witches, which seems appropriate as Pwllhewrach is Welsh for witch's pool. It's thought that the name Pwllhewrach comes from the old practice of dunking witches in pools. Its use today is far more benign. There's a pair of grey wagtails just underneath me here, and they've both got a beak full of insects. And this is typical grey wagtail country. You've got the falls, Pwllhewrach here, lots of water, high walls with lots of little holes where they can nest, and all this rushing water means lots of insects which they feed on. And they're quite comical actually, because they're walking slowly across the stream here towards me, and I'm pretty sure that the nest is tucked into the bank just below me here. Pwllhewrach is on the northern edge of the Black Mountains, a series of broad ridges running north-south and separated by narrow steep-sided valleys. It contains some of the highest land in the National Park, with many of the peaks between 600 and 800 metres above sea level. The valleys were gouged out by melting glaciers at the end of the last ice age, resulting in steep slopes and a precarious landscape. An odd-looking church. It's St Martin's Church in Cwmioen. And when I walked in, I couldn't quite make it all out, but if you look at it carefully, you see that the tower is leaning towards me. There's an arched back to the main roof. The walls are not quite square, but there's a good reason for all of this, because it stands on a site that over hundreds of years has seen a succession of landslips, and that includes one major incident that splits the mountain behind us here. St Martin's Church at Cwmioen has been called the most crooked church in Britain, and it's one of many stunning historical sites in the Brecon Beacons. It ended up like this because it was built by medieval builders on an ancient landslip. The crack in the hill above the church is clear from above. The old red sandstone summit, a rock characteristic of the beacons, fell apart thousands of years before the church was built, but unbeknown to the builders, the surrounding land was still unstable. Like the rest of Britain, the Ice Age has left its mark on much of the landscape in the beacons and helped to create some beautiful scenery. Llangors, the largest natural lake in South Wales, was also formed by a glacier. Given the right conditions, a spring dawn is truly magical. birds come to feed and breed around the lake. At this time of year, they're in peak condition and in their finest feathers. Llangors also has more secretive wildlife, particularly in the ditches leading to the lake. This is one of the best places in the Beacons for water voles. They were reintroduced here during the past 5 years, and Cardiff University student Sophie Lee Lane has been monitoring them to establish how well they're doing. But they're not easy to see.
Now, have you ever seen a water vole?
I haven't, no.
So you've been monitoring for 12 months, whatever it is now, and you haven't seen a water vole yet?
No, I know they're in this area, but I've never seen one in person.
Right, okay, well, I've got a trick. I've got an apple on a stick, right? And we're going to put it down as bait here, and we're going to try and draw them out. It's worked in the past, but it'll work this time or not, I don't know. Okay. But we'll give it a go in the hope that we'll see a water vole.
To be fair to Sophie, she's been monitoring them using camera traps and by looking for signs of activity along the ditches. Actually seeing them active is another matter.
Something moving there. It might be just bubbles. They got a hole up on the bank, and they got a hole right down just at water level, and those will be connected, will they?
Yeah, they should be connected. They'll have a number of holes connected into different escape routes, so they're all connected into one colony.
And what will they be eating? All the vegetation, you see?
They kind of are quite selective. They tend to eat sedge, reeds, which then allows a lot more vegetation richness in the area. So they tend to be ecosystem engineers. So then they kind of modify their habitat, so they increase
the variety
of plants and wildlife here.
Pretty good, that's excellent.
Can you like jump in? Let's move in. I don't know whether.
You can see it, yeah, you can see it.
Where can you see
in the grass there?
Yeah.
That's what I can see there. These are proving pretty elusive, aren't they, today?
Yes.
I reckon we put the wrong apple, is it? The brand of apple, I think. But I assume we've been here long enough, I reckon we leave the apples and just let the voles get on with it. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
Come on. You watch once we've gone, they'll eat everything.
We left the cameraman on his own. We were probably too noisy. And sure enough, after a while, one appeared. He just couldn't resist the smell of fruit. Before reintroduction, water voles were believed to be extinct in the park, and this is probably the only sustainable population in the Beacons. Let's hope they recover and extend their range. The main river in the Brecon Beacons is the Usk. It flows right through the national park from west to east, and this section is near Crickhowell. It's rated as one of the best fly fishing rivers in Britain for salmon and trout. Justin Connolly is a professional angling instructor who lives in the Beacons.
Hello there, keep fishing, fishing. I'll just sit down here if that's alright.
Carry on.
Have you had any luck so far?
No, not yet. There's few fish rising.
Fishing for what now? Trout?
Wild ground trout.
And then what's the technique? Do you try and drop the fly right on him or up above him?
No, I want it slightly upstream, just so it looks like a natural insect.
Oh,
Natural insect coming down in front of the fish. And if I cast right on top of him, it's going to spook him a bit, so...
And then if he takes a bite, do you then strike?
Yeah, just lift into the fish.
Do you then take notice of what insects are around at particular times of the year?
Absolutely. Through the year, we've got different hatches of flies and insects, and the trout will switch on to that particular hatch. So we need to try and imitate what's coming up through the water, which is the natural food for the fish.
So by a hatch, what you mean is that like a lot of insects will all hatch out roughly the same time, do they?
Yeah, I mean, early morning, the hatches are going to be quite sporadic and ones and twos coming off. As the day goes on and the temperature rises, we get a larger hatch of insects and flies in, so hopefully the fish will switch on.
And sometimes I have seen it where you get literally millions of, say, mayfly, whatever, all hatching out at the same time.
Clouds of insects.
That's a lovely thing to see.
It is.
And on the Usk now, is fishing as good as it was 20, 30 years ago?
A lot of the fish have been taken out in the last 20 years. It is very good fishing, but I think we need to be realistic and sort of look after our fish stocks at the moment. If you look at some of the statistics, it gives you cause for concern, I think.
So for you, it's all about the sort of pitting your wits against a fish, catching it and then putting it back in.
Exactly. If I want to fish for the table, I'll go and fish a stock fishery. I think the wild fish are too precious and important to be taken out of the river, to be honest.
The best known parts of the Brecon Beacons National Park are incredibly busy, and it doesn't matter what time you go there, there are always lots of people. But you've got a few parts that are tucked out the way that very few people know about, and many of those are old industrial sites. Most of these old industrial sites are in the southern fringes of the National Park, where historically the rustic north gave way to industrial South Wales. This old quarry is in the central Beacons, and there are many like it throughout the National Park. In many of these sites you'll find special and protected wildlife during the spring, which is why I can't disclose the exact location of this quarry. This is a little ring plover, and naturally it nests on river shingle.
It's quite surprising, really, to find a pair of little ring plover here in a quarry high up in the Brecon Beacons. But when you think about it and look around you, everything that birds need is here. They have gravel where they lay their well-camouflaged eggs. They have grassy banks where they can go and feed on invertebrates. They have shallow pools where later on they'll take their chicks to feed on the insects. So to us, this might look like the surface of the moon, but to a pair of little ring plover, this is home.
Another special bird has also taken up residence in the quarry. It's making use of the quarry cliffs for nesting. There's a very confiding female peregrine falcon sat on a nest less than 100 metres away from me here, and they've chosen the old nest of a raven. And these old quarries are great places for peregrines to nest, and I remember as a young lad growing up, these were very, very rare birds, and they're not common now, and there's something really special, I think, about peregrine falcons, and to be able to lie here and share 5 minutes with a bird like that, it's a real privilege. Within the park, peregrine falcons are scarce breeders that are mainly confined to these former industrial sites. They're particularly sensitive at the nest site, therefore we're getting these shots at distance with a long lens. Although she's relaxed, she has one of the best eyes on the planet and knows we're here, so we won't be staying long. More than anything, the Brecon Beacons is famous for its magnificent uplands. This is the path above Craig Cerrig Leisiad, which has fantastic views of the Mid-Wales lowlands, and across the valley, Corndy and Pen y Fan, the highest peaks in southern Britain. In the winter, places like Craig Cerrig Leisiad can be very hostile, but in spring, they're very important for nesting birds. A regular visitor to this site is bird recorder Andy King.
Andy, what a setting, eh? What a setting.
Fantastic, yes. Yeah.
Are you scanning for anything in particular, or just having a look at it?
There's so much of interest here now in early summer. You know, you've got the summer migrants coming in, and then some of the more established birds like the peregrine falcon and things like that.
Now, Andy, you're the Breconshire County Bird Recorder. What does that mean?
Every county across the UK has a county bird recorder, and it's really their role to keep tabs on which species are doing well, which are in decline, as well as rarities that might get blown in from North America or come across from Europe.
Andy, together with an army of volunteer bird watchers, gathers information on the birds in the beacons.
And away you go on the Apples, always ravens and the
Always
cronking away.
He's taking me to a good spot for breeding birds on the upper slopes. Apparently around 80 different bird species either visit or breed on Craig Cerrig Leisiad. Wheatears, and this is a fabulous male, breed pretty much everywhere in the uplands. But the speciality here is the ring ousel, a summer migrant from North Africa. It's the best place in the whole of the beacons to see this mounting blackbird with a white bib. Only around 12 pairs of ring ousel breed in the entire national park, and most of them nest in Craig Cerrig Leisiad. They come here because they like the crags for nesting and the surrounding grazed land for worms. As you head west from Craig Cerrig Leisiad, you move from the central beacons to the Forest Fawr area of the national park. It's a vast area of open moorland and mountain peaks, which are up to 700 metres above sea level. In the southern part of Forest Fawr, you have a completely different landscape. Steep wooded slopes and fast-running rivers descend to hidden valleys.
Something very hypnotic, I always think, about water like this and the power of water. This is the River Mechte, and it's hard to believe standing here now, but 100 years ago, this was the site of a big gunpowder factory.
The old buildings are still visible before they become completely hidden by the spring plant growth. Judith Morris's grandfather, her great-grandfather and her great-great-grandfather all worked at the gunpowder works, and she still lives in the valley.
How big was this at its height then?
Well, it employed around 65 workers. It had 70 buildings producing gunpowder for civil engineering, for mining, for quarries all over the world. It was an absolute hive of activity.
Why here? Because it's a lovely looking valley, it's quiet.
Well, this is a really secluded spot, but that really was one of the reasons it was chosen. The seclusion meant nobody would come into this area.
In case there was an accident, of course,
Yes. Also, the River Mechte serviced this area, and it was a very strong river. And also the woods, they used the trees for charcoal, so it was an ideal valley for the gunpowder works.
It's fascinating, isn't it? You know, right on the edge of the Brecon beacons, a quiet, lovely wooded valley with a beautiful river flowing through it, and there's all this amazing history here too.
With a hidden secret.
There are many reminders of the beacon's cultural past in the landscape, and while today there are stunning scenic locations virtually everywhere in the national park, it's a landscape that's been used, fashioned and refashioned by people, and this has been going on for thousands of years.
That is an impressive rock. Look at the size of that. This is Maen Llia, and it's one of 30 standing stones in this area, and this one is by far the most impressive one. And what's interesting is that it's made of a rock called calcrete, which isn't found in this area, so they think that it was carried here by the Ice Age some 20,000 years ago, but it was actually raised 4,000 years ago by our forefathers. And when you consider that they say that a third to a quarter of it is underground, that gives you some impression of the size of this thing. It's absolutely huge. And why is it here? Well, we're not quite sure. Is it to mark a route? Is it a boundary? Has it got religious connotations? Nobody really knows. It's clearly a visible landmark on a pass between hills, so it could conceivably mark an important route. And there are many known ancient routes in the beacons.
You see, it's spring. I tell you what, up here it is cold. It's really cold. And this is an old Roman road. Tricastle, the village of Tricastle is what, about 2 miles behind me. I've got Usk Reservoir down below me over there. And 2,000 years ago, when the Romans were here, this must have been quite a busy place with the legionnaires marching back and forth. And the best thing for me is that every step of the way I've heard skylarks. Not just 1 or 2 skylarks, but a choir of skylarks.
These males are singing for territory. They're trying to attract females, and when they've paired up, they'll breed and nest on the ground. It's a lovely spring sound. Moorland locations like this attract many species of ground nesting birds, and they'll breed here from April right through till midsummer.
I've got a nice patch here. You've got the rough grassland, you've got the rushes, but you've got a little bit of gorse as well. And on the gorse here, a male stone chat has been sitting up for a while. And he'll have a territory. The female will be nearby somewhere. Probably the nest will be in one of these gorse clumps. And he's a really smart bird. He's got this sort of very dark head and a white collar. And they'll always sit up somewhere prominent, and if you go anywhere near the nest, they'll chuck away at you. They'll tell you, listen, keep away here now. And this is typical meadow pipit habitat, and there are lots of meadow pipits up here. They're a really important part of the food chain, because up here all the birds of prey will be eating it. You know, there'll be sparrows passing through, the merlins, peregrines as well. And talking of birds of prey, there's quite a few of those around. There's a buzzard, a whitish buzzard perched up on a tree down there. He's probably keeping an eye open for mice and voles, and again you'll have lots of mice and voles in an area like this. And there's been a kite hanging around too, floating around using the wind. And that kite may be looking for mice and voles, but up here probably looking for carrion, because it's so hostile in the winter and the end of the winter into spring particularly. You'll have lots of dead sheep, dead lambs, so there's plenty of food up here for them.
I always like looking for wildlife in the uplands during spring. You may have to walk for miles, but you quite often find something special. This is Van Heer Ridge, one of the most spectacular paths in the Beacons. It's the longest of its type in Britain and leads you out of Forest Fawr to Carmarthenshire and the Black Mountain area. This particular summit, right at the heart of the Black Mountain, is called Garreg Lwyd. It probably gets its Welsh name from the grey stones littering the summit. And it's an important resting area for migrating birds during the spring.
It's one of those really lucky occasions when you're in the right place at the right time. There's a small flock of dotterel, they call them a trip, a small trip of dotterel. I'm not quite sure really. I've seen 9 birds up there, there might be 1 or 2 more. For me that's a rare occurrence. First time I've seen dotterel in Wales for probably about 7 or 8 years. So this is a brilliant find. And these shoulders, these high tops here, are a regular passage place for these birds. They're birds that winter down in Morocco, and probably these will breed up in the Highlands of Scotland. And these ridges, they pass through most years. It's the first time I've stumbled across them here, and they're cracking birds. They're absolutely stunning. If you look at them, some are more colourful than others, and you would bet money that the colourful ones are the males, but they're not. They're the females, because when they get onto their breeding grounds, the female will mate with the male. She lays the eggs, but then she abandons it. She leaves the eggs and the chicks for the male to rear. She moves on, she mates with another male, lays some more eggs and moves on again. That's why she's the one who's colourful, he's the one who's quite drab, because he's the one who's going to have to sit on the floor incubating those eggs. The dotterel will also call in on the beacons on their return journey to Africa during early autumn. But at that time, the females will not be as colourful, with the breeding season completed for another year. There are more than 5,000 kilometres of stone walls in the Brecon beacons. This particular one is right on the western boundary of the national park, near Iolos. Stuart Fry has been building and repairing walls for 22 years, and during that time he's built 22 kilometres of walls.
It's not the best of days to be out on the hill by yourself.
Good Lord, no it's not, is it?
How are you, boy? Good to see you. Good to see you. You carry on working, go on. So what's happened here? You've got a bit of a break in the wall, collapse.
Yeah, the wall's collapsed.
How old is this wall then? Do we know?
Yeah, well, yes, we do know, funny enough, because there was an enclosure act for the whole of this hill in 1812. It's classically, the earliest is going to be mid-1700s. You can tell that by the way it's built. I don't say it's not built well, because that's a bit unkind to the, it's been here for what? Nearly 300 years. Yeah, but it's got characteristics that tell me it wasn't built by...
craftsmen.
Well, I wouldn't say they weren't craftsmen. They were being paid for what they put up.
Yeah.
So
it's a fast job, really.
Get it up as quick as they could. If you see a collapse wall, look in the middle. The middle is called the hearting.
Right.
It's the heart of the wall. And if that fails, and the way it fails is it's not packed tightly enough when the wall is put up, and it'll sink, it'll rattle down to the middle, so that the two sides are not supported. And the fundamental of dry stone walling, this is why people's garden walls always fall down. If you think of, there's a good example here now of why this has fallen, right? If we look at that stone, that is laid in exactly the same way as you lay a brick or a concrete block.
Yeah.
That's not the way to do dry stone wall. If you look at this stone, the depth, the length of the stone is into the wall. Yeah. Right? It's zippering into the wall, and that's the way to do it. Well, of course, you've only covered that much face. Whereas by putting it that way, you've covered that much face.
So if you want to build it quickly, you throw it up like that.
And that's why these walls fail.
Stuart's walls will probably last another 300 years, and who knows, someone might be here then to read his stones for an insight into the Brecon beacons and its people of today. Many have lived and worked in the remotest parts of the beacons for thousands of years. Even the bleakest upland has been much more densely settled in the past. These walls were built by a Celtic tribe 2,500 years ago. Do you know, the Brecon Beacons National Park has got so much to offer. An incredible amount. You've got the landscape, you've got the wildlife, you've got peace and solitude when you want it, and you've got a lot of history too. And this is one of the park's many hidden gems. It's Garden Fawr. It's an Iron Age hill fort. Inside this, and this is huge, you could fit, 5-6 rugby pitches in here, maybe even more. There would have been a whole village, if not a town in here. And the views over the Towie Valley looking towards Llandovry that way, Iolos the other way. And I've been lucky because this spring I've had the park pretty much to myself. But all of that is going to change now when I come back in the summer.
And you can see Summer on the Beacons with Iolo on Friday night here on BBC One Wales at 7:30. And if you've missed any of the series so far, you can catch up right now on BBC iPlayer.